Some of Apple's major investors are now urging the company to help kids who are addicted to their phones. In an open letter, two of the company's big stakeholders say Apple needs to offer more tools to help fight phone addiction. The tech giant has responded, saying it has, quote, new features and enhancements coming to improve parental controls. So where does the responsibility for this addiction actually lie? Joining us from London, Ontario this morning is Dr. Michelle Ponti. She's the chair of the Canadian Pediatric Society's Digital Health Task Force. Good to talk to you this morning.
Good morning.
First, before we start our conversation, I just want to give viewers a sense of what the numbers are. Children aged 3 to 5 years old spend an average of 2 hours per day in front of screens. 78% of teens check their phones hourly, and 50% report feeling, quote, addicted to their phones. Do these numbers point to an actual addiction?
You know, these stats are a bit staggering. You're absolutely right. And I think that the open letter was really an astute commentary on our shared responsibility for how young children use technology. And I think it is really in line with the recent Canadian guidelines published by the Canadian Pediatric Society on optimal screen time in young children.
It can certainly feel like an addiction, even for adults who say, you know, I just that feeling of I need to check my phone. But who is really responsible is the debate. Is it a company who, they never lied. They said we're out to make a successful product, one that makes you feel like you need it, or the parents who allow the access?
Absolutely. I think it is speaking to it's a shared responsibility. It's not just the tech companies. It's not just physicians or parents or clinicians or educators. It's all of us. And I think we are all feeling the negative consequences. And I do see the addictive properties of excessive screen time in my daily practice. But at the same time, I don't think any of us could have predicted the extent of the negative consequences. Based on TV data, though, we do know that excessive screen use does lead to attentional problems and other learning problems. We know that exposure to violent content can contribute to aggressive behavior. We are now seeing more sleep problems associated with screen time, as well as the contribution to childhood obesity.
So Apple's very carefully worded statement seemed like they were going to address the concerns, but really put it back, the onus back on the parents. In your opinion, is that where the responsibility actually lies?
No, I think that it's all of our responsibility. I think Apple has an opportunity now to actually set an example for all tech companies and really start to develop safety mechanisms at the outset, much like cars are already have seat belts and airbags already built in, and have the parental controls a little bit more user-friendly. I think they can consider developing an expert panel of child development experts and psychologists and educators and clinicians to help monitor the effect on child health and well-being with all of this screen time.
Tech experts will say that there is a cost to the convenience that smartphones will offer us. Is this one of the costs?
You know, I think it is. I think it's an unintended negative consequence. And, I'd really like to highlight that the new Canadian guidelines really have a nice 4M model to help guide parents in optimal screen time for their children. And that includes minimize, mitigate, mindfully use, and model. And, I think if I could offer one top tip, that would be for all of us to really look about how we use media in our lives currently and to really consider setting up a family media plan and have a real plan, much like we plan healthy, balanced meals, much like we plan our kids' activities, really plan how we're using screen time in our daily lives.
Well, there's guidelines for food. So what are some of the guidelines for kids then? What's an amount that is what you would consider excessive?
Right, so I'd like to point out that the focus of the Canadian guidelines was on children 0 to 5 years, but all of these principles are applicable to older children and adolescents. For example, more specifically, we generally recommend minimizing screen time, and that means for children under the age of 2, no screen time is recommended, and children 2 to 5, less than 1 hour a day. And as far as mitigating or reducing the risks, We are really encouraging parents to be present when children are using their screens and co-viewing when at all possible so that they can also look for harmful content. And we talked about mindfully using, so think about having screen-free zones, so no screens at the dinner table, no screens in the bedroom, for example, and really model healthy use. So all of us, turn off those screens when we're not using them. We don't need to check our texts or our emails every 5 minutes when we're playing at the park with our kids.
Dr. Ponti, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.